Welcome back to You're Always Fine, a space to show up for yourself and embrace the mess that lives underneath because, let's be real, it's exhausting always being fine. So grab your headphones and allow yourself to listen, laugh, and even cry because you are not alone and we aren't always fine. And that's okay.
We are back for part 2 of my interview with David Black, founder and CEO of Cabana, a mental health app that is shaking up the way we view and access mental health support. I'm your host, Kristine, and if you haven't listened to part 1, I highly recommend you hit pause here and go listen to that episode. Trust me, it's worth it. If you're all caught up, then let's dive right back in.
I'm going to go on my little clinical high horse here. I talk about this a lot, and that is mental health is not a destination, point blank, period. Even in just by way of you being able to push off grief for a year shows you that it's not a destination. And another thing I don't believe the traditional system does well is creating what is mental health maintenance, right? We have 16-week crisis, we have illness management, etc. But we have how do you check in when you don't have, right? I barely can find an hour, and I'm a therapist, and I know that, some mornings I am so mad at myself because I think that whatever I have to do for work is more important than the 5 minutes I spend journaling, So we know how hard it is. So how do we help and foster this idea of like it's an everyday, it's a maintenance, it's, and it's going to look different for everyone. After I get done with some, my COVID caseload right now, interestingly, it's coming to the point where I'm seeing most of them either monthly or bi-monthly for their, and we're communicating in between a little bit. But again, as a therapist, it would be great if I had a more formalized way or that to manage that maintenance. That's something I've adopted in my practice. And most honestly, if I didn't have this opportunity, I couldn't do that because I need those spots to make my paycheck. So I get why why the profession hasn't molded to that. But it's, something we talk about. So I'd just like to know your thoughts of that mental health maintenance as a thing.
There's Corey Keyes is a researcher out of Emory University who has been doing a lot of work on the mental health continuum, this model that catches individuals sooner. And he has a TED talk where he states, we park ambulances at the bottoms of cliffs. And that is our healthcare model. We are really good when someone falls off at grabbing them, fixing them, and repairing them. We're not good at stopping them before they go off the cliff. And so why do we not stop people? Why are we not designed to stop? Some of it is the payment models focus on episodic. And so we're improving in that with value-based care and initiatives there. But some of it is also just the convenience. Are we designed to meet people where they are? Are you building something to catch that person when they have a few minutes in their commute, when they're in the car to work on themselves? Are you giving someone an entertaining option when they're looking for a distraction, when they're doom scrolling, but they don't want to feel the doom of it, but they need something that entertains them? Are we designing solutions to catch people at the moment where they're ready to engage? Because our competitors for our time and our investment are Netflix, it's maladaptive activities, it's drinking. I mean,
it's also right. It's a lot of self-indulgence as opposed to and being well, I deserve it because I work so hard. We're seeing also. I don't know if you've seen the numbers around revenge, sleep time procrastination, where it's you grind all day long and then you stay up until basically 4:00 in the morning, which we all know is not good for anything. Because again, there was no taking a rest or a 5-minute, and it's also about intentionality, right?
Yeah.
I feel like poop when I get 15 minutes late to my therapy session because I was held up in doing therapy for someone, right? As opposed to creating stuff that I have 5 minutes and this will be 5 minutes. Not I'm going to stop and then I'm going to feel guilty because I didn't invest in my, you know what I mean? There's subtle messages that happen when we create that structure.
Yeah. The Amazon and other consumer-focused companies that have made it possible for us to get most anything delivered to our doorstep. There is common conventional thinking that the experiences you spend the most time with influence and set your expectation for what you expect all other services or all other experiences to be dictated around. And convenience trumps all at this stage right now for us as a society. So the expectation that I need something that is quick and convenient for me, despite the clinical benefits of that longer period of time and
100%.
investment, this is a balance that the mental health industry is going to have to grapple with, where the therapist knows that that 8th session is going to have some value for you, but the individual is looking for the quick fix because they can get that.
Well, right? Exactly. Social media or I remember when the first time you approached me and you're like, okay, I love everything you did with the balance. Now I need you to make it into 20-second. I'm like, I was like, he's kidding, right? Like, there's got to be a joke where you think, again, another though barrier I put up for myself because I think we put out amazing content for, in very short clips of it. Our moments are some of my favorite things to make. But it requires, of course, me to think about, okay, if you don't have the luxury of the long way,
yeah,
what are the key gems? I think that's what you actually said to me. You're like, I want the aha moments. And I was like, I can't just manifest aha moments, but you can, you can put yourself in enough, I've been doing it for 15 years. It's just a matter of, again, stop siloing every client as a and start okay, what are my themes? What are the aha moments of, this, as close as you can get. Of course, every experience is unique. But again, I think it's the difference between that shared connection of pile of things as opposed to siloing it off.
Yeah. There's so much that can be learned from just raising someone's self-awareness. If we look at the low hanging for all of us from a mental health perspective, it's improving our awareness of the biases that influence our thinking, our logical side, as well as the labels that define how we're feeling or how we're communicating.
I couldn't agree more with this statement. I say to my clients all the time, David, that's exactly what I say. They're like, okay, I'm aware of it. Now what? And I'm in my head, I'm like, oh, now it's on you, right? You have a series of decisions and stuff to make because you can't unsee these things. But getting it from your subconscious up, to me, that's actually where the bulk of the work is. So I could not agree with you more. But does it have to be that deep, dark subconscious work to get there? Yeah, when you're on the edge of a cliff, maybe. But if we start a little sooner in baby steps, maybe not.
If we start a little sooner, then good can be done. And so if we're trying to really reach people earlier, then we have to realize that they're not thinking, someone is not thinking, where do I go to find a therapist? I'm looking for a therapist. That's not the problem someone's trying to solve. They're trying to spend time in a way that's helpful for them, that gives them maybe a break when they have that time, helps take away something that is causing them time or stress. It's not adding to their experience. And you cannot reach people earlier in our busy lives without acknowledging that you're competing with something that has nothing to do with mental health in general for their time.
But you make such a great point when you just said that because, when you're like, they're not looking 100%. No, but I'll take, a text I got from the other day from a client. She essentially was just like, I have to break up with my boyfriend. He's causing me too much anxiety, right? She has anxious attachment style. And so going on TikTok and happen to scan on something that makes you feel seen because it's like, you're not a bad girlfriend because you don't let your boyfriend go out. It's your anxious, you know what I mean? Something like that makes you feel seen. It takes the pain point away. And then, like you said, it alleviates, and that's what we're competing in. So it's kind of circling back to that plane ride. We're competing for connection. And again, what people hate their therapist or love their therapist. And it's one thing, how they connect with them.
Yep. Groups. I'm a big believer in groups and the power of group-based support because so much that you see when individuals who've gone through group therapy, whether it's psychotherapy or just support in general. But if you look at Yalam's work around this, there's research on why people really like groups. And one of the biggest reasons that people give out of, I think, 65 reasons is the ability to discover and accept something about yourself that you didn't previously know. And what helps that discovery is getting to see an insight that someone else has gained that you can connect with and realize that's actually a mirror image of myself. And then the acceptance part is you've now seen that you're not the only one feeling that way. And to go through that journey is so powerful. And the reality is, hyper convenient life and everything that we designed around hyper convenience makes it tough to get to those moments of clarity so quickly. And that is, I won't say the fun challenge, but that is the necessary challenge for us to solve. Is, we cannot stop this world of consumer convenience. We can design within it. And that's something important.
What you just said, I always talk about how the first year in grad school, like, it saved my life because, again, I didn't even know I was going through a struggle. Honestly, hyper perfection, like, there's so many ways mental health shows up and stuff. So, like, I didn't even, at the time, I wouldn't have been like, oh, you're like, now it's like, oh, wow, you were so unwell. But I remember my teacher was teaching about enmeshment in my family structure class. And she was not talking to me. She was not doing therapy. We were learning, like, straight up learning therapy. And she said it, and the discussion that was happening, again, third party to, it was a group setting, whatever, but it allowed me to think of my problem or like what was happening in my life without it being so threatening. Because we weren't talking about me. We were talking in a group, and it kind of just, a light bulb just went off for me. And our work, about how that's one of the huge powers I don't think is talked about enough, is that you can, almost like watching a movie in a way, listen to somebody's story, connect, do all this mental math in your head around it to help you see what you couldn't see before.
Yeah. Well, just think of how you felt, the emotional power that you get from a movie or specifically a Taylor Swift song. When you think of music and just, the emotive powers that come from the arts. It's the validation we get from an artist who knew what was in our head when they came up with the lyrics for that song, or a creator and that wrote a storyline that we can all see ourselves in. There is healing power in the validation that we get through those experiences and in the outlets we get from that. And it's, I think, going back to kind of the spaces you've heard of, individuals that cry more often on planes than anywhere else. And why is that? Why do people feel the emotions of certain experiences that they have? And I think there's something powerful there when we look at the experiences that we fit into our lives, where we feel comfortable, where we feel greater levels of self-disclosure or
seen, right? I guess, where do we feel seen?
Yeah. And if our goal is to help individuals become more self-aware, so that in getting support, raising the knowledge of what they can do for themselves and when they benefit from others and when they need to go to a higher level of support, the way we design those solutions will differ depending on that need that's there.
So it's a long task list for the next few years.
What greater way to spend your time though, professionally or personally?
I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. I say I get all the best aspects.
Yeah. Mantra this year, upgrade your problems. So let's solve problems and then earn the right to solve some more.
I love that. Before I let you go though, I want to quickly we were talking about imposter syndrome. And I know for me, when I came to the tech side, I was like, I do not belong in this seat. Like, I'm one little lonely therapist who, again, I've been given so many wonderful tools to go and kind of build that confidence. And now I feel like my seat is well justified. But they're always hearing from me and how I would what my take home tool would be. So sitting from your seat, in all your different ladders, what's your advice for imposter syndrome, or your like quick tool to how you, breathe and go into another meeting when like the odds are stacked against you, or maybe you're not, or you don't feel like you have space in that room?
Yeah, I think, so there are two things that I do that have been helpful. One's more recent, but the first is it is lonely in this world where you're an entrepreneur and trying to navigate challenges. And so finding others that can validate your thinking, your doubts, and those pieces, I find helpful just to know I'm not the only one thinking about that. So just raising my self-awareness that I'm waking myself up. I'm in my own head about something. The way I do that is I listen to a ton of podcasts, in particular, podcast for entrepreneurs. Any story of someone that's had to do a hard thing or had to go through adversity, even if they're not an entrepreneur, I'm interested in. And I've found a lot from how I built this, because it's people that have done great things who are still just people. And I have to remind myself about that. If you're passionate about a problem and you are humble about what you can do in that and what you can't do, then you can find others that are just as passionate that fill in those gaps. So for me, it's learning how others have gone through experiences. And when I have a doubt about myself in a role, I listen to a leader that's been through a challenge before. If I have a doubt about, am I solving something as not being a clinician, I just want to get smart enough to know if I'm asking the right question. So there's that piece of just trying to listen from others that helps me. In that, there's also this piece that I didn't realize was really connected to imposter syndrome, but it's kind of never pausing to acknowledge what you've accomplished or things that have been powerful for you, sort of just writing it off like we're not good enough or not there yet. And this is something that I don't know that I see it as imposter syndrome, but I think I do hear too many of us doing it, and I'm guilty of it. And it's if someone gives you a compliment, and it could be even if I like your shoes, or something like that. It is this pattern of saying, oh, these old things, like that, they're just, hand-me-downs. And when the reality is that sets in motion this imposter syndrome, this self-doubt of I'm not good.
You nailed it.
So I've started and I'm working on this, but if someone gives me a compliment, and I don't want to sound obnoxious in this, I don't think anyone does.
No.
But I acknowledge them. I say, thank you. That comment made my day. That I hadn't heard something like that before, or I really, you just made me smile, and I appreciate you for saying that.
It sets a different cycle.
It does. Yeah. I mean, those habits.
And they are your wins, right? Like they are your, even if all you got was to this point, there was a ton of trailblazing there. So you know what? Like it is not you, right? I think that's part of the feet on the floor, head in the sky, heart in the middle type of thing, where it's like, you can say like, yeah, this was a huge win. I hope that's not the last win I get. Right. But it was funny because when you first said it, I was like, oh, we're going to have a nice on-air David and Kristine. But when you brought it home, I think you're 100% right, where, you're almost starting the cycle that maybe or dismissing someone's acknowledgement that you deserve, that you're not being present enough to hear someone say you deserve to be in this space, because
it's great to say there's always another mountain to climb, but it is important for you to stop and acknowledge the person next to you saying, what an amazing view right now. And all too often, if you're just so focused and saying, we're not done there yet, that's not good. And I think more just tactically, if you don't train yourself to appreciate those little moments, it has a ripple effect in it.
And like you said, I think presence too, right? Like it's the difference between letting a cycle start of negative self-talk and imposter and doubt, or being present enough to be like, somebody noticed, and it's funny that you said that, because I often think this about the podcast, and every once in a while you'll drop in and you'll be like, hey, I listened to this episode, and you're like, yeah, your boss listened or whatever, but then you'll pull out a line or something. And I'm like, man, again, and I feel this overwhelming amount of gratitude that you just stop for a second, because you don't know what I deal with behind the mic. And just like as a CEO, I can empathize, right? But those are our own battles to kind of climb. And again, I think with all the work we're doing, by opening that little door or finding another door in, that's those small baby steps of catching someone before the cliff.
Yeah. it is, the iceberg analogy. Like we'd only see what someone wants us to see, what they're going through. We all deal with so much more under the surface. And, I know how busy we get, how hard it is. So I'm always interested in little things that I can remember to do. Now we can call it atomic habits, but what are those little steps that will have positive or negative implications? Because I'm going to keep doing them. So what are the little changes that we can make?
I love that. Because if you're not doing it positively, it's either neutral, which to me, stagnancy is like the word, or you're actively working against yourself. I love that. You're right. Because either way, it's going to be something.
If someone gives you a compliment, accept it. Yeah.
Ooh, I love that one. I'm going to have to make that into a moment or something to get on the app. Well, let's see how well he does, guys. I will say, David, thank you so much for being here. And again, thank you on behalf of the entire, obviously, I'm sure everyone's got their own David in their story, but my whole career was changed by you breaking me out of my box. Whatever happens next, I can't go back into that box. And the one word I think of when I think of you, Heather, and Cabana is innovation. And I don't know that word was ever on like a word that I value the way I value it now. And how much I've watched myself as a person, professional, and as a small business owner, just by introducing, like, that word is very, in my opinion, powerful. It gives you a lot of control. So, thank you for, choosing the harder path or choosing, a way to do something. It's not easy to be the person that's going to do something differently. And I see that, I value that. So, thank you.
Well, you just made me blush. So you can, thank you. I appreciate it.
We'll be back next week with a brand new episode of You're Always Fine. Until then, mind your health.
Seriously, you're fine. You're fine because you have the power to access your place of peace anytime you need it. However, if you get stuck, we're right at the palm of your hand to help. Check out our show notes for this week's source list, recommended content, and Cabana live group schedule. We'll catch you next week for a brand new episode of You're Always Fine.
The team at Cabana has found your reset button. The answer? Cabana Pods, acoustic soundproof booths with immersive micro vacations proven to boost your mood in just 5 minutes. To learn more about Cabana Pods, visit www.evenhealth.com/pods.